You might think that since the right to our freedom of speech is the first and most famous thing that America is known for, it wouldn't need expanding. But as of late, the right to freedom of speech has become more and more suppressed. Our culture in today's society in America has become so dead set on this idea of political correctness, quote unquote. This political correctness is taking away from our ability to speak freely. The problem doesn't come from the government directly. People aren't being hauled off to prison for saying something offensive. We haven't reached that point yet. But we need to pull together to stop this degradation of our right to speak freely without fear before it does get to that point. The real way our right is being suppressed is through the way that you get attacked if you say anything anyone doesn't agree with. The prime example we see of this attack is none other than the attack on Donald Trump. I don't mean to sound like a racist country hick, but it's apparent all the same. Trump said that he wanted to put a cap on illegal immigration from Mexico by building a more effective barrier than an 8-foot tall chain link fence. And the public got offended and tried to cut him down through any means possible. This equally applies to anyone who has the same standing on that matter. The politically correct crowd will tear this group down with any means of offensive words that they can, not standing to be politically correct themselves. I'm mainly criticizing the mobs that show up and crash, quote unquote, Trump rallies. People are injured during these raids, and the stuff that the victims quote the attackers having said when interviewed is downright disgusting and sad. This aggressive mentality is heavily transferred to the high school community as well. You will be put down and fought 30 versus 1 if you bring up anything about simply being a Christian. I had a personal experience where a fellow student of mine stood up for herself in the idea that homosexuality is wrong. The class very quickly dissolved into a mob, throwing insults and degrading her until she cried. Even the teacher was participating in this. This irrational aggression society has learned to adapt to is putting a strain on our freedom of speech. While, yes, it's understandable to censor what you say personally to avoid unnecessarily offending anyone, that does not excuse the behaviors of those students and that crowd when they heard something they didn't agree with. We need to work together to get back to the state we were 50 years ago, when you could speak your mind about where you stand, even if someone doesn't agree with you. Our country takes the right to speak freely for granted, and we need to stop and look around at what we're becoming and come to our senses before it's too late. What we've always had, we don't value. But the dangerous aspect about this slipping is that once we lose it, there will be no going back.